anybody know where the night theater is downtown? So you know what the Beckler Museum is, the Firebird, shiny thing? So if you look next door, that's the night theater. So the night company used to run newspapers before they all went out of business, Knight Ridder. And so Susan Patterson was running the Knight Foundation in Charlotte. So the Knight Foundation funds a ton of stuff in this community, upwards to about, I think their annual budget every year, probably about $20, $30 million. And so Susan, you know, through a friend, so this is when we talk about who you know. So through Susan, a friend of hers, Margot Fesperman, who I knew and worked with, Susan was looking for, you know, a protege to some extent. And Margot said, well, Keith's a great guy, I think you should take Keith, da 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 da. And so through Susan, who had a ton of clout in this community because of the Knight Foundation and what she did, you know, Susan basically became like my spokesperson. You know, she became my rabbi. And so in that, anytime I wanted to go somewhere or needed to hook up or needed to know somebody, Susan would just say, hey, here's the number, call. But as I navigated in those circles, and so, you know, she put me on the board of the Knight Foundation. I was on the board up in Davidson at Ada Jenkins, and another one at the time. And so you're seeing how, you know, operations are run, how organizations are run, nonprofits. But again, you're looking in the room, and at the boardroom, at the table, was all older white male, white women, and you might have, you know, one black person, one or two black folks. But these folk were making decisions on how they can implement art and art-based programs in an entire community. You know, not just in their neighborhood, but in yours and mine and everywhere else. And so, you know, you start to see that, you know, we're largely missing from those conversations. And so, you know, through my advocacy, through me being on things, it's about pushing that agenda to get younger black folk involved, but get them a seat at the table. You can't make decisions if you're not in the room. You know, you have folk who are on the outside, and they can push agendas that's going to be largely their own, and they may not have the funding and the resources. But when you look at, you know, institutions like the opera or the symphony or the museum spaces, you know, they've got a huge platform of donors. You know, they've got a huge budget. They've got a platform in which this is what we're going to talk about, this is how we're going to do it, and whether you show up or not, they're going to do it. And that just shows you how that stuff, you know, will circulate. And so if you're not in those rooms, man, you know, they're going to make decisions, and you're not going to be a part of that. So it's like voting. You know, we talk about, you know, who's in office, but people complain about them, but they don't vote. So it's the same thing. If you're not involved in those conversations as they get ready to move. I mean, even if you look at Smith, so, you know, if you all are watching what's happening around Smith, you know, so the light rail's coming, and then you're looking at where, you know, the Arts Factory is, across the street. So, you know, all that stuff is going to change, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years. Where the Mosaic Village was, that used to be a car wash, if you didn't know that. And so the crazy thing about it was, and I'm not going to take too much of your time, but when I was at school, it was a car wash, and that's where, I mean, all the drug deals were happening down there. It was a car wash and a convenience store right there where Mosaic is. And so the Griffin family, who owns all that stuff down there, you know, they still own it today. And so that's another thing, get you some land, man. Get you some property.
In Biddleville, too.
Yeah, get you some property.
Yeah.
So the Griffin family owns all that. They've owned all that since the beginning of time. And so they got rid of that, built Mosaic, but the conversations the city planners have always been talking about. So you think about when it comes to land usage, there is no new land. Like, you know, if you move out someplace else, you move in, just like Center City, Uptown didn't look like that 20 years ago, where else you gonna go? You know, Charlotte is landlocked. It's not like they're gonna grow more Charlotte. So essentially, once they got done with Uptown, what's the closest spot to Uptown?
5 points
right
in
here.
the Biddleville area.
Where else they going?
They have $1 million homes right next door.
All those homes used to be 30,000, 40,000. If you go down to two-way, I mean, all this stuff has been here. It's just what are they going to do with it? But what are we going to do with it? And what is Smith going to be a part of? And the students that are here, because they're coming. Development is coming. You can bet that. You know, the Arts and Science Council is talking about leaving their, you know, they haven't really promoted this, but they're looking at leaving their uptown office to put an office out here. And all they're waiting on is the right construction, the right processes, and it just keeps moving forward. And so you have to understand, man, that there's a long game that's being played. But if you're not a part of those conversations, or if you really don't care, then, you know, there's that. But it's happening. And so, like I said, this construction is happening for a reason. It's always money, man. There's money involved in everything. And you got to figure out a way to get involved in that too.
Yeah, and that community used to be all like Johnson C. Smith faculty. That's where they lived, and they would just walk over.
Even down by the water. So you go down down Beatty's Ford, where you see the water tower, that whole community back there. You know, students used to rent some of those homes out. You know, on the other side of the Busy Bee and, you know, Campus Street, you know, all this stuff hasn't changed. You know, you see it now. If you look at it's all the same. It's just newer buildings, but it's all the same. Hasn't changed much, but it's getting ready to. Because there's nowhere else for folks to go. And they want what they want. And if you can take a home that's been back there, you know, in Biddleville and all this other stuff, that used to be $70,000, $80,000, and now, you know, I think Charles Johnson from the Panthers, he's one of the first to buy in back there. And then, you know, he renovated his house, and then that house was worth, I think, about, you know, $354. So what does that do to the neighbors? Oh, well,
taxes.
Take a second mortgage out on that thing, so we can get some new funds and get this thing up and running. That's how that plays, man. So Smith is right in the way of everything else.
Yeah. I tell them that, you know, we think so futuristically, and sometimes college students are like, oh, that's 10 years from now, it's 15 years from now, I don't want to think about that. But I tell them that every single thing that they're doing now is going to determine the trajectory of their life, whether they have discipline, you know, whether they've got certain prerequisites for if you want to go to medical school or you want to be a pharmacist, or the jobs that are going to gross the type of income that you're talking about that will be required in order to do that type of stuff, like buy homes, buy land, invest, get some nice clothes so you can go around fancy people, you know what I mean? Because that's required too. And I just kind of hone that in every day, even though this is communications class. I still,
it's life.
Yeah,
it's all life, yeah. Man. And you want to be a part of that, and you know. But if no one's having the conversation with you, then you have to seek it out. You know, you have to. When I bought my first home, I mean, no one, you know, it was about learning from folk who had just bought a home. You know, when it was, so my first experience paying bills. You know, I remember I was 19, and it was my first summer staying down here, and I told my mom I wasn't going to come home. I said I'm staying in Charlotte because I want to kind of live you know, kind of live semi-autonomy on my own. And I had no idea about going down to, you know, Duke Energy or Piedmont and cutting all this stuff on. You know, you got to put a call in, you know, turn the cable on. So, you know, my first few weeks staying here, I was actually staying on Dame Jermaine's couch. And so, you know, Dame came up, and Dame's a, you know, if you know him, if you've ever seen him in the shop, but Dame, he's pretty, you know, he's cut and dry. And so I was sleeping on the couch, and Dame walks downstairs, and he says, he's standing there as I'm sleeping, and he's got this piece of paper, and as I wake up, he's just waving the paper. He said, yo, he said, Cradle, listen, he said, this is the cable bill. And I'm like, yeah, all right, and I'm like, what? He said, so yeah, you're responsible for this. Figure it out. And I'm like, oh, okay. So my lazy days of summer were over. It was, gotta go get a job. But it was learning through them, and then, you know, when they all got homes, it was like, okay, this is how you need to talk to the mortgage lender, you need to do this, you know, your first car. I mean, all this stuff is just someone, if you don't have someone to help you, you need to find someone to help teach you to do it, and do it the right way. You don't want to, because you're going to leave out, unless your parents are paying for this full cash, if you have loans, you're going to owe on this, and the next thing you know, you don't want to owe on a car and then a house, you know what I'm saying? And if you have children, you're going to owe them. I mean, it's a lot. So you want to take it step by step, piece by piece, with the right information.
With people who have knowledge and wisdom like you.
But I wasn't always, I'm saying I was young and dumb. You know, I mean, we're all teenagers. I mean, listen, we all do it. You just live through it. you live through.
Yeah, and learn from it. I tell them, try to find that narrow, straight path, you know, like what you think you want to be, and then just try to find the people to help you develop yourself and cultivate yourself while you're here. Because I really think it's amazing what you've accomplished, and I appreciate you coming here and sharing your story with us. I hope it's inspired and encouraged those of you who are here. Thank you for coming. So
anything for Smith, man. I tell you, I've always loved Johnson.
Okay.
For what it did for me.
I feel the same way. I got teary-eyed today just thinking about, I went to Central. Central gave me the confidence, literally, to be able to go in.
We're not talking about Central right now.
No, Eagle Pride Amplified. Okay. I'll talk about HBCUs in general. It gave me the kind of confidence to be able to go into predominantly white spaces, and whatever they were thinking, I knew who I was, because that's what joining a sorority, being in different groups, being in a pageant, whatever you've done, it's giving you that confidence to be able to do that. So, and swag, which you have. I think you have to have your own swag so you can have your own confidence. And I think you develop that over time. I read some stuff about you that you said that. So,
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm not cool anymore, though.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, you can be cool and, you know, be Cradle at 40, whatever it is. Though nobody knows. When I did your video in church, I think, how did I find out? When you said you graduated in 92, I was like, he's got to be lying. Yeah, I was like, what? Okay. Well, does anybody have any more questions? No? Okay, well, thank you so much.